Hello, Recapped Mystery here. Today I'm going to explain a horror mystery movie called Open Grave. The movie opens in darkness where a man wakes up and is horrified to find himself in a pit surrounded by a large number of dead bodies. The man is terrified and can't remember who he is or how he ended up in such a bizarre place. He then notices a woman watching him and pleads for help, but she vanishes. Moments later, the woman suddenly throws a rope at him and before leaving, the man finds a gun which he keeps for himself. After he successfully exits the pit, he searches for the woman from earlier, but she's nowhere to be seen. He then makes his way through the woods and soon discovers a house with lights blazing in the midst of darkness. The man cautiously prepares his gun and enters the house where he sees several people arguing. He quickly points his gun at them and demands answers about who he is and how he ended up here. Another man named Lucas also raises a gun at him and accuses him of killing all those people in the pit. The protagonist then notices the Asian woman who helped him earlier is among them. So, he frantically asks if she knows him, but she remains silent. Soon, it becomes clear that all of them woke up in this place with no memory of who they are, and they don't even know each other. It turns out they found some ID cards and learned their names, which are Michael, Sharon, Nathan, and Lucas. However, they can't find the ID of the man who woke up in the pit. So, they decide to call him John Doe. Then, there's the Asian woman who acts like she knows all these people, but unfortunately, she doesn't understand English and is mute. The group then realizes that they also have car keys, but there are no vehicles around. Meanwhile, the mute woman tries to communicate by writing something down, but none of them can understand her writing. Next, the group begins exploring around the house while the mute woman approaches Lucas and tries to communicate. She shows him her arm, which is covered in strange marks, and it turns out that he has the same ones. This leaves him confused, but just then, John summons the mute woman because he saw something on the refrigerator. There's a calendar stuck there with the 18th marked, which is the day after tomorrow. How do they know what day it is? He demands to know what's going to happen on that date, but she can't make him understand, leaving him boiling with frustration. Later, the group finds a room that is filled with a lot of weapons, which scares everyone. Michael then takes a gun, and he seems to be very skilled with it, which implies that he must have been either a police officer or a military officer or a gamer. The group now decides to rest for the day, but they soon notice the mute woman running into the woods alone. So Sharon, Lucas, and John immediately go after her, and they notice the stars look very bright, which implies that they are far away from the city. During this, John begins to have flashbacks of himself dragging the body of a woman with a seahorse tattoo. The group then notices a strong smell and is horrified when they see several dead bodies tied to the trees. Back in the house, Nathan and Michael check the books from the shelves, and Nathan is stunned when he realizes that he is fluent in Latin, French, and even Italian. He also knows that all these books are about medicine and human and animal anatomy. So, Michael thinks that Nathan must be the owner of this house. Meanwhile, in the woods, the group soon arrives at a shed where they notice the mute woman feeding an old woman who is tied up and looks completely disheveled and sick. She immediately recognizes John and screams that he used her before trying to attack him. However, John knocks her unconscious and Lucas notices that there is a camera in the shed, which means someone is watching them. Sharon suggests they should help the woman, but John disagrees, thinking she was tied up for a reason and seems dangerous. The next morning, the group decides that the best thing to do is look for the cars so they can get the hell out of this place. The others proceed to leave while ordering Michael and the mute woman to stay at the house. Michael becomes extremely furious that they left him out and believes that he can be valuable, but they refuse to listen to him. Next, Nathan, Lucas, Sharon, and John head into the woods where they notice several bodies tied up in the trees again. Soon, on board, Nathan begins throwing rocks randomly, and they soon hear a metallic noise in the bushes. The group grows intrigued, and when they check, they discover that cars are hidden there, which fills them with hope. Back in the cabin, Michael informs the mute woman that he feels a strong connection with her, and perhaps they were a couple. She also looks at him with affection, but soon they're alerted by a scream in the distance. Michael thus asks the woman to lock herself inside and then rushes to check alone. He soon arrives at a field where he notices a sickly disheveled man trapped in a fence and screaming for help. Michael thus gets closer to help him, but the man suddenly begins laughing and attacks Michael, piercing his neck with the wires. Meanwhile, in the woods, the group inspects the cars and finds a group picture there in which all of them are present except John. This makes Lucas suspicious of him and he argues that John isn't part of their group, but John says that he maybe could have taken the picture. The group then tries to start the car, but realizes the fuel is very low, which won't be enough for them to make it to the city. While they wonder what to do, all of a sudden, the mute woman arrives and frantically approaches them. They follow her and find Michael, who is bleeding from his neck and on the verge of death. The panicked group desperately tries to help him, but the poor man cannot make it and eventually passes away. This leaves everyone distraught, especially the mute woman, which implies that maybe they were indeed romantic partners. The deranged man in the fence suddenly begins screaming, so a frustrated John shoots him to death. This triggers more memories in his mind in which he recalls loading weapons and eliminating zombie-like people. Afterwards, John and Sharon get in a car and decide to drive around and look for some help. They soon arrive at an abandoned building where they notice a kid running away. They try to talk to the kid, but he locks himself in some kind of a warehouse and refuses to respond. John begins asking him for help, during which the boy calls him by his real name, Jonah, and tells him to leave, saying, "They are coming tomorrow." A shocked Jonah wonders how the boy knows his name and demands more answers, but the boy refuses to speak further. This makes Jonah very angry, so he tries to break the lock with a gun and starts shooting at the door. But Sharon eventually stops him and asks him not to hurt the boy, who is just a kid. She then touches Jonah's face and both feel a strong familiar connection towards each other. Meanwhile, at the house, Lucas begins to feel strange and also recalls several memories in his head. The mute woman tries to calm him down, but he starts experiencing a strong headache. He then tells the mute woman that he recognizes her, but suddenly begins to grab her arm aggressively until Nathan stops him. Lucas eventually calms down, after which Nathan thinks he is infected with some kind of disease. He tells the mute woman that the group told him about the deranged woman in the shed and asks her to show him the location. She obliges and takes him to the shed, and Nathan instantly recognizes that he has been there before, but they find the place empty while the deranged woman has already left. As he begins to walk, the mute woman tries to stop him, but he assures her that he knows where these roads lead. He thus decides to explore further while the mute woman returns home. Nathan then comes across a pair of glasses on the floor, and when he puts them on, he begins to recall a flood of memories of him arguing with someone. Elsewhere, the mute woman returns home where Lucas says he knows who she is and begins angrily staring at her. This scares her, so she runs to the attic and locks herself in. Lucas assures her that he doesn't want to hurt her and just wants to talk, but she refuses to open the door. Frustrated, Lucas begins looking for another entrance and soon finds a door outside that leads to the cellar. He thus decides to go inside and soon finds some kind of lab which has computers, instruments, and even brains floating in tanks. There are also several CCTV cameras monitoring different cells to observe the deranged people. But the cells now seem empty, and they must have escaped. In another scene, Nathan comes across a cell where he finds the same deranged woman from the shed holding her dead daughter in her arms. Nathan immediately recognizes the woman and calls her Helen while apologizing for what happened to her daughter. However, the deranged woman suddenly attacks him. So, Nathan hurriedly locks her up in a cell. Returning to Lucas, he finds a camera and upon reviewing past footage, he notices a video in which Jonah is injecting patients for some kind of experiment. However, Jonah also mentions that the vaccine has an adverse effect, which is momentary memory loss. Lucas soon observes Jonah conducting tests on him and even the silent woman, which fills him with rage. Meanwhile, Jonah and Sharon are returning to the residence upon a tree abruptly felling before the vehicle. Jonah halts just promptly enough and he soon spots a cluster of woodcutters felling timber and attempts to approach them. Sharon feels afraid and urges him to go back to the auto, but Jonah disregards her and tries to converse with the men. But regrettably, they prove to be infected people that lose no moment in pursuing them with axes. Horrified, they swiftly reach the auto to flee, but it won't even ignite, leaving them alarmed. So, Jonah gets out and labors to move the vehicle with all his might as the hostile men draw near him. However, prior to them being able to injure him, they suddenly cease for some rationale. Jonah and Sharon then see dead figures suspended upside down in the trees nearby. They soon grasp that these remains are set up like scarecrows, and it appears the infected are fearful of them, possibly due to the odor. Sometime subsequently, they return home where an irate Lucas immediately challenges Jonah regarding his strange trial. Jonah asserts he cannot recall anything. While Sharon views the recording and is devastated, she inspects her upper limbs and ascertains she bears needle marks also, while a vexed Lucas ends up knocking out Jonah. He then pulls the male to the chasm with the deceased figures. And though Jonah is unwilling to go there, he has no alternative. Upon being tossed into the chasm, he notices a deceased female with a seahorse mark, which sparks his recollections. Later, Lucas returns to the dwelling and he anxiously informs Sharon they must depart quickly. She inquires about Nathan, but Lucas doesn't even recollect who Nathan is. He starts to act quite strangely and advises the two females that he shall safeguard them both. When he commences to become aggressive, the mute woman flees from there, but Lucas eventually succeeds in grasping her. He pins her to the ground and attempts to forcefully kiss her. So, Sharon appears and shoots his rear, but Lucas evades the assault and bolts frantically into the woods. After this, the quiet woman rushes to the hole and tosses the cord again, managing to save Jonah. The man then understands that tomorrow something major is set to occur, so he resolves to see the youngster once more to seek for explanations. However, when he reaches there, he finds the portal ajar and notes the male is nowhere to be found. Next, Jonah goes on to drive away when he runs into the youngster and his family who are making ready to depart somewhere and collecting items from a dilapidated vehicle. He stops them and asks what is transpiring. So, the boy's grandmother requests him to draw away. She states Jonah has harmed her entire kin with his needles and he ought to leave. Jonah asks what he had done to them, but the lady just enters her auto and starts to drive away. Later, Jonah inspects the vacant vehicle and finds numerous vials of vaccine there, which triggers another surge of memories. He recollects that he had given them to a man and implored him to deliver them to the military. A bewildered Jonah examines the auto further and soon locates his and Sharon's portrait, which confirms that they were a pair. Then, all at once, a conveyance collides with his auto, and it turns out to be Lucas, who seems to be losing his sanity. Jonah then states he remembers that he was a physician, but he wasn't harming anybody. He was merely endeavoring to aid infected people who were afflicted by a fatal contagion. Jonah then realizes that the result of the dose has already faded for Lucas, so if he is injected, he might revert to normal again. He thus endeavors to assist the male, but Lucas doesn't heed and instead proceeds to assault Jonah. In a desperate endeavor to defend himself, Jonah grasps a stone and strikes Lucas on the cranium. He then immediately attempts to save his companion, but it is too late as Lucas is now seriously bleeding. During his final moments, Lucas finally recollects that he and Jonah were friends, recalling how he had thanked the medical doctor for saving him. However, on one occasion, an infected female with the seahorse mark assaulted Lucas, so Jonah ended up slaying her. He then reprimanded Nathan as it was his duty to secure the selves, which sparked a huge disagreement between them. Following this, Jonah began to drag the woman's corpse, but soon heard from his team that the other infected were also free. After the team was assaulted, Jonah advised them to lock themselves inside the dwelling and inject themselves so they might recover. At that instant, an infected individual bit Jonah, so he ended up falling into the hole. Jonah thus had to inject himself to stop himself from becoming contaminated since he was bitten. He knew that upon awakening, he would not recall anything, but it was the sole alternative. In the present, the group starts to recollect everything. So, Nathan returns home and swiftly embraces Sharon, who also regains her recollections. But soon, the house becomes encircled by infected who aggressively strive to assault them and are no longer fearful of the dead figures. The two struggle to protect themselves as well as they can, but they soon exhaust their ammunition. So Sharon resolves to leave a message for Jonah in case they do not survive. Elsewhere, Jonah is also out of power, so he starts sprinting home only to be met by several infected. But then all of a sudden, a helicopter arrives from nowhere and opens fire, eliminating the infected. It turns out to be the morning of the 18th, and Nathan finally recalls that it was the day the rescue unit was scheduled to arrive to save them. He cheerfully exits the house waving his hands and shouts that they are here and still alive. However, the soldiers are instructed to exterminate everyone, and they brutally shoot Nathan to demise while Jonah arrives just in time to witness this. Sharon and the quiet female also see this and are horrified, so they rush to conceal themselves. Next, Jonah and Sharon reunite, and the man feels grief-stricken as it turns out that Nathan was his sibling. The two then proceed to flee while the silent woman also conceals herself very well, and the soldiers cannot locate her. But unfortunately, Sharon is soon attacked by an infected female and brutally stabbed. Jonah now starts to lose composure. So, to stop the soldiers from shooting them, the two have no choice but to fall into the pit with the dead bodies. To deceive the soldiers into believing that they are deceased, Jonah injects Sharon with the vaccine again before injecting himself also. This signifies that they will carry no recollections when they wake up and experience it all once more. Sharon thus hands a message to Jonah and pleads that next time he must recall everything and conduct things correctly. The two then express their affection for each other before they pass out. Shortly thereafter, the military arrives and starts tossing bodies into the hole, including the boy who had warned Jonah yesterday. A while later, Jonah awakens with no recollection of anything, while Sharon appears to have perished from her wounds. Jonah then gets up and fails to notice the message that has dropped to the ground. The perplexed man begins yelling for aid, so the mute woman arrives and tosses the rope again to assist him out. At this juncture, we learn the substance of the message in which Sharon has divulged particulars about the plague. And it appears that the sole person immune to the malady is the quiet woman. Sharon thus implores Jonah to safeguard the mute woman at all expense, as she is the final prospect for humankind. Unfortunately, Jonah knows none of this, and he has to assemble the entire thing